So PJ is going to start us off and he's going to give a presentation to the Local Economic and Community Plan, the LECP, or give a presentation about this topic. Then afterwards, I'm going to be posing some of the questions that came in about the LECP to PJ. So I got questions submitted by all of you in advance. If any question during the webinar comes up and you would like to ask it, just pop it into the chat. I will see it and I'll ask him on your behalf. We will be sharing this webinar on YouTube afterwards, so you'll all be able to go back and look at it. If there's any documents that we reference during the presentation or during the Q&A session, we will be doing a follow-up email and we'll be circulating those with everyone. Also, the contact details for staff who are on the call will be made available at the end of the webinar. We'll recirculate these as well, so if you do have any questions that come up afterwards, once you have time to digest all the information, you can follow up then. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen there. Can everybody see my screen? Is that working for you there, PJ?
Yeah, I can see it.
Fab, okay. I'm going to mute myself and off you go whenever you're ready.
Okay, so hi everybody. A few familiar faces in there in the crowd I can see already. So my name is PJ Murphy. I'm a social inclusion development worker with Cork City Council, and I'm a part of the community team under the Corporate Community and Cultural Affairs Directorate. So I'm going to be presenting today on the Local Economic and Community Plan, or we'd casually call the LECP, which is running from 2024 to 2029. So we're kind of into our second year of it. We'll come this May, it'll be active 2 years. So I'm basically just going to go through the kind of the purpose of it, the aim of it, how our LECP was formulated and what informed it, how it was put together, an idea of how an action works once it's in the LECP, and just a little bit about who's kind of responsible for looking after these actions, how is the plan implemented, and then also I'm going to say maybe how, from an individual or a community or an NGO perspective, how can you utilize the LECP? So what use can you get out of it? How can you make it work for you? I'll just be giving my own contact details and also my line manager, Kieran O'Connell, because we would be the main point of contacts for anyone who has any questions about the LECP. And we welcome any questions and any suggestions for it. And it's always good to have more connections in the community. So yeah, we'll just jump straight in. I'll get the next slide, please, Alana. So really the purpose of the LECP, and it came about through the Government Reform Act in 2014, and it's that every local authority must have a plan which over a 6-year period, and the objectives and actions needed to promote and support economic development and the local and community development of the relevant local authority area, both by itself directly and in partnership with other economic and community development plans. So really it's a economic and community development plan for 6 years for each local authority. So I'll take the next one, please, Alana. And the aim of the LECP, and this is within our own LECP, so specific to Cork, and we see the aim of the LECP is to improve the quality of life for all those who live, work, study in, or visit Cork. The LECP's goals and actions have a special focus on those who have not been able to thrive in the city and those who have a high need for the services and supports for the services and supports available across the city. So really that is the purpose, is to try and make life better for those living in our city, but a special focus on those who maybe have not been able to have a good of a life in recent years. So that's kind of our main focus. So, like I said, the LECP, it what's it informed by. So as you can see, there's a number of plans here on this slide. So our LECP would have to relate back to our Cork City Development Plan. The Cork City Development Plan relates back to the regional, spatial and economic strategy for the southern region, and then that forms back into the national planning framework. So obviously national planning framework is the longest long-term strategy for the country. So it's a 20-year strategy, started in 2020 and it's going to go to 2040. And then each of the regions in Ireland have their own strategy, but it can't be duplication, but they have to kind of speak to one another, so that if we're achieving our plans, it's actually part of achieving a wider plan. So that's kind of, I suppose, you see the the linear relationship. So it goes from the national planning framework all the way down to the LECPs. So and it's very important that once these plans are reviewed, there's two things that we look at is for the climate. So when we look at actions, we look at the climate impact and also that there's no duplication. So that what we set out in the LECP, this exact same action can't be done in the Cork City Development Plan, and what's ever set out in Cork City Development Plan can't be done exactly the same in the Southern Regional Plan. So the idea is that actions aren't duplicated, but they do relate to one another and they do have a relationship with one another. So it's that there is a relationship between all these plans and that the country as a whole is working in a particular direction. So, like I said here, our plan for this year is called, for this 6 year period is Let's Plan Together 2024-2029. And it says the local economic and community plan provides the policy underpinning for the community and social inclusion work undertaken not only by Cork City Council, but also by partners and stakeholders across the city until 2029. So I'll just take the next slide, please, Alana. So once we were putting this together, and every local authority will have this when they're putting together their LECP, that there has to be an advisory group, and you can see the table or the graph on the right hand side of what and who feeds into the creation of the LECP. And across the LECP advisory group, you'd see that there would be a chair from the LCDC. We'd have the chair of the SPC for the community culture and placemaking. You'd have the chair of this SPC for the strategic and economic development. We'd have the director of services from the corporate community and cultural affairs, and we'd also have the director of services from the economic development section. And you'd also have sectoral experts, which we called on from time to time across environment, culture, society, and economic. So the idea is here that the LECP advisory group is made up with a lot of people from the public, from the community, and the LCDC does own the LECP. There's acronyms coming over here now, but this plan is owned by the LCDC, and the LCDC is made up by the people. So really, the communities, the public, the people of Cork own this LECP. So it's important that from the very get-go to the creation of this document is that the people of Cork are very much the biggest stakeholders within this plan, and it's because it's for the people by the people. So it's a very important note about that. So just the next slide.
Just
What?
before we move on,
Yeah.
PJ, can I ask one question or just clarify one thing for those on the call? So I can see SPC written there. Can I just confirm that that's the Strategic Policy Committee?
Yes,
That's what
sorry, yeah,
that's
yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. So there's kind
perfect.
of two that was involved with the LECP. So that'd be the SPC for community and the SPC for economic development. So thanks for that, Elena.
Perfect. So we have SBC, and then you said this already, but the DOS on the slide stands for the Director of
Director of
Service.
Services, yeah. So for each director would have a Director of Services. So the Director of Services, Corporate Community and Cultural Affairs would be there, and also for the economic development. So on the next slide, we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs. So when you actually see our LECP under each high-level goal, and I'll explain high-level goals in a minute, that we reference which of the UN Sustainable Development Goals that these actions are related to or are helping towards achieving. So you can see that there are 17 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So like we said, our policy or LECP is in line with, I'd say, regional policy, national policy, all the way up. But from the UN Sustainable Development Goals, by our actions being in line with the SDGs, we're also then contributing on a global level. So you can see the relationship here from the macro scale to the micro scale. So it's very important that these actions try to target or try to alleviate some of these issues, like no poverty, zero hunger, reduce inequalities, climate action. So once you actually see our LECP under each section, we reference which of these high level or SDGs are being achieved. So just on the next slide, we're just going to talk about the engagement in numbers. So when I spoke about when we were doing our consultation for the LECP, it's vitally important that you have the responses and you hear the voices of the people in Cork about what they want, because to me, it's you ask the people who are affected are going to be impacted by this and what they need and what they want. And our team, when we were doing the engagement, definitely did a huge piece of consultation engagement with the people of Cork when creating this plan. So you can see there was 462 survey responses. There was there was, sorry, 54 written submissions. Um, in 12 in-person engagements, there was actually 457 people in attendance in totally, and then we spoke to 177 organizations. So there's a huge amount of work done with speaking with people on the ground, NGOs, our own directorates, our own community team. So we basically tried to cast as wide of a net as we can to hear the amount of opinions of people in Cork. And there was a special interest on the seldom heard voices. So typically, people from groups or particular backgrounds who may not normally not have the chance to engage in such a process as this, but we kind of went out of our way to try and do that. And one example was for single parents. There was actually a specific engagement set up where it was in the Millennium Hall, but there was actually kind of childcare facilities provided as well at the time. So of course, if you are a single parent, access to childcare, to be able to engage in a process like this might be difficult if you don't have someone to look after your children. So actually, at this particular engagement, there was basically a pop-up creche was made available for the parents so that the children could be looked after and that they could fully engage and contribute to the LECP. So we're always looking at ways to remove those barriers to engagement and make sure that we're giving everyone a chance to contribute. So just on to the next slide. Um, through all the consultation, we came out with 6 high-level goals. So these are our 6 high-level goals, which is number one is a city valuing health and well-being. Two, a city built on partnership, inclusion, and equality. Three is a city of learning and culture. Four is a city driving economic and enterprise development. Five is a city of safe, accessible, and resilient neighborhoods and communities. And six is a city leaning on sustainability and climate action. So we have 6 high-level goals, and under each high-level goal, we have a number of actions, and there's over 120 actions in the plan. And if you actually jump on to the next slide, it'll just help me explain this. So under each of those high-level goals, they're actually kind of like visions for Cork and what do we want? We want a city valuing health and well-being. We want a city of learning and culture, and our actions then set out how we're going to achieve that. So really, you can see here that underneath the plan, we have 6 high-level goals. Each high-level goal would then have a high-level goal lead, and that's nearly all of them. Well, all of them are council staff, and majority of them are actually in the community section. So that is a dedicated person who is responsible for that high-level goal. They're responsible for overseeing their actions, and how they do that is they have a number of partners that support the delivery of these actions. And across the number of actions, Cork City Council would be the lead and would be mainly responsible for carrying out or implementing or achieving that action. But it's the LECB is such a large plan, we have to rely on a lot of our stakeholders and other organisations across the city to achieve it. And in some actions, and a fair few, there are other organisations that are the lead. So those lead partners would then report on their progress back to the high level goal lead, and the high level goal lead then would then track the updates on what we call an action tracker, which is basically an Excel sheet where we have all the actions and we can see the most recent update, who's the lead partner, who are also additional partners, what's the KPI, what's the time frame delivery. So for us, it's just for us to be able to track all of that, but it's the high level goal lead who is responsible for that. And that's a good piece of information because you kind of, if you want to engage or you have questions as a someone in the community, or you're an NGO, or you're a partner that's involved in this, you can see who is actually responsible or who's the main point of contact for each of the high level goals, which is important. So that's basically how an action works when it's in that. Obviously, sometimes actions don't reach the KPI that maybe we've set, Because maybe there's a number of reasons why that action didn't work out, and that's just being realistic about actions that go into any plan. But you'll see, and we stress as always, that the LECP is it's a live document, that we're not set to say that these are the most perfect actions and these are the right KPIs and we're sticking to that. We understand that you have an idea at the time, or whatever the sentiment was at the time, that action may have suited, but then in reality, it may not actually be working in practice. And rather than just trying to stick to an action that's not working, we do have the ability and the flexibility to review actions, look at them and say, okay, should this be amended? Can we change this KPI in some way? Does it need to be revised? Or in some cases, some actions may be seen as unfeasible, which sounds like a negative, but there's also a huge amount of learning and actions that in reality don't work on the ground. So we are always overviewing or reviewing actions and the implementation to see what is working in practice. And we can then at times, if needed, revise the actions based on public consultation or speaking with the high level goal lead, or just looking at the socioeconomic I suppose the time that we're operating in, because things could have changed since before 2024 once we put this plan together. So, but the main point is here is that it's a live document. We can kind of think on our feet, we can be flexible, and we can change where needed. So, if I just get the next slide, please, Alana, just talk about the implementation. So, a, this implementation plan is also available in the LECP. So this is how we plan to implement the LECP over a 6-year period. So there's a number of ways we do this. So first of all, there's a full review. A full review takes place every 2 years. And now that we're in our first 2-year period, so come this May, we're going to reach 2 years since the LECP was launched. Kieran O'Connell, so my line manager and myself, are already started plans about completing a full 2-year review, which every action will be looked at. We'll speak to our high level goals, we'll speak to our stakeholders, we'll even look at if there's particular actions that need to be escalated higher beyond our stakeholders, that there'll be opportunity to do that. But that's going to happen every 2 years. So it'll happen now in 2026, then in 2028, and then 2030, which is the end of plan final review. So we're not just going to start the plan in 2024 and then come 2029 going, actually, that wasn't working in 2024. It's far too late. So we have an opportunity every 2 years to look at how things are going. Ongoing implementation and tracking, like I said, we use our action tracker. And just to explain the action tracker, we use what's called a traffic light system. So just like the traffic light colors, you have your red, amber, and green. So any actions that are marked green would be on track, or just going very well, or on track to be delivered, or if that delivered, depending on the time frame. Amber would mean that an action has begun. There's work has started on this particular action, but there may be a couple of barriers that have slow progress, or are that need to be addressed before we feel like the action can be completed. While red would be actions that maybe have not started, there's probably major barriers in the way. This could be around maybe a particular person has to be employed to get this action going, or maybe there's an issue around resources, or maybe in practice there is a barrier in place that is stopping this action from being achieved. So from a glance, when myself and Kieran are reviewing the action tracker, we can then see what percentage are green, what percentage are amber, and what percentage are red. So it then helps us to guide our attention to which actions need more support. And it's the high level goal leads that would deem which of these actions, what category they fall in. And that comes from their interaction with their lead partners as well. So that's kind of the communication line from us at the implementation side of things down to the people delivering it on the ground. So you also have the LCDC and the SPCs. So 6 projects are examined in detail each year. 6 projects delivering on the LCP action plan will present on their progress to the LCDC and the SPC as follows. So there will be 3 from the community or social initiative, and 3 from the Economic and Enterprise Initiative. So, but regularly there's reports back to both LCDC and SPCs, because they'll LCDC does own the LECP, so it's very important that Kieran and myself are constantly reporting back to them because they do oversee that the LECP is being delivered and on time. So I'll just get the next slide, please. So each year also there's a review with the interagencies. So last year in November, we actually brought in all our stakeholders and we cut like a mid-year review. So we asked people how are things going, what are the barriers, what is implementation like in practice, and we also got a chance for them to highlight actions that they felt weren't working right, or maybe there's a gap in within our society that isn't being addressed by actions set out in the LECP. So that happens yearly. And that session really informs our full 2 year review. So as we plan our 2 year review, we're looking back at our notes from November and what was said, and that kind of helps us identify issues that were raised, and some of them we were able to address already. But it'll also be used for further discussion in September when we're actually planning our full 2 year review. So there's also internal reporting structures, so yearly and biennially. So report on the LEC progress across all directorates. So that comes out in the annual service delivery plan, the corporate plan, and the city development plan, which are all publicly available and people can read up on also. And then lastly, the LECP progress updates go into the annual report on our duties as part of the public sector duty. So there's a number of ways that we implement, but if I just get the next slide, I think I just mentioned it there, that the day-to-day implementation of the plan is done by myself and Kieran O'Connell. So Kieran O'Connell is a social inclusion specialist, also on the community team, and I myself, just to say again, I'm a social inclusion development worker. So Kieran and myself are looking after the day-to-day implementation. So along with support from our colleague Boosie, who provides administrative support, we're like looking at the monitoring of the action tracker. We liaise with the high level goal leads on the progress. Kieran and myself are actually the high level goal leads for high level goal 2, which is a city built on partnership, equality, and inclusion. So there's a number of actions in that we'd be working on fairly regularly trying to achieve. Um, we must report back to the LCDC and also to the SBCs. We would then organise the yearly and biennial reviews, just like I mentioned there. So the one like in November and the full 2 year review coming up in September. So yeah, organizing the full 2 year review as well. So there are day-to-day tasks along with some other social inclusion um, projects that we work on. But really, a lot of the community team, their work is based upon the LECP. And so a lot of our day-to-day work is achieving actions within the LECP. Just the next slide. So please just talk about the action tracker. Yep. So like I said, the progress is monitored by the traffic light system. The high level goal leads provide regular updates on each action. Actions are completed, amended through review, are marked unfeasible where delivery is no longer possible. And there was actually a question we received that how can the public track the progress of the LACP? And up until now, in all fairness, it would be difficult to do that as just any person outside the organization who wants to track the progress. So, and that was mentioned in November. That was an issue, and that was so we took action on. So the LACP action tracker that I speak about is usually is a document that was kept in-house, and people there was limited access to that. So it'd be myself, Kieran, the high level goal leads, and just a small handful more other people could go in and see it. But we decided that it would be good for the public to be able to track the progress of particular actions ongoingly. So what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a PDF version of the action tracker where every action will be, you'll be able to see every action, you'll be able to see their status, you'll be able to see the most recent update, you'll be able to see who the high level goal lead is, who the working lead is, who's the lead partner, and all the way down. So we're very committed to having accountability, and I suppose that because it is the LECP is owned by the community and by the public, that there should be transparency around whereabouts it is along the line of progress, and also who should you contact and who should you be reaching out to, putting particular actions that mean something to you, or just as a way of tracking any of the actions. So we felt that that should be made available. So it's good news that that will be made available in the coming months. And what will happen is basically a version, or the most updated version of the LCP will be downloaded in PDF version and be uploaded to the Cork City Council website underneath our community section and then underneath the LECP section. And there'll be as each month comes, it'll replace the previous month. So anytime you look in there, it'll be the most up-to-date version where you can track any of the actions, look at updates. You can see what's green, what's red, or maybe if there's some actions that would be marked unfeasible. So you can know then, okay, look, it's unfortunate that that's not being pursued any further, but at least I will know, and there'll be a comment as to why that's not being pursued any further. But any of those actions that would be marked unfeasible, that's not the end of them. They would be a review would take place in them, and of course, if they made it into the LACP, there's obviously a need for such an action, but we'd be looking at maybe how can we amend it for future iterations of the LACP. So. And I always think this is probably one of the most important slides, is that when we speak to people, and if I was involved in this, I would just go, what good is this plan to me? If I'm someone in a community group, or I'm just an individual, or I'm working in an NGO, what good is it? And people want to know, how can you utilize it? So what benefit is it to me, just to put on a selfish perspective? But that's really otherwise, why would you be interested in it if you don't know how you can help you? So I broke it down across three different categories. That's from the individual, the community, and the NGO. And for individuals, you can influence local priorities through consultation and participation. So many of the people here may have been at consultations regarding this iteration of the LECP. And
PJ, I'm just going to come in
yes,
really quickly there and remind of this is a lunchtime webinar, so we have a good few questions as well. So if you could get through the next two slides pretty
yeah,
promptly, that would be appreciated so we can get to the questions. Thanks.
sorry, I'm too chatty. So basically, you can see here, if I could break it down, it's advocacy. You can look into the LECP and see what actions are in there, and you can hold council accountable, whether or the partners are involved, to say this action has been put into the LECP, you committed to do it, and you could use that then as a leverage, or when you're making applications or whatever it may be, to say there's a commitment to deliver this action, and you can refer back to the LECP. The LECP also has a number of different evidence that it reports back to that you can also use, but also when making applications to a Cork City Council or any other body, you can then reference the LECP and show how your projects are in line with the LECP, which is in line all the way up to the national strategy. So there's also ways you can look at how you can align your own strategy with the LECP, but more so, you can hold people to council accountable, or anyone else that's involved in this, to say that this was in the LECP, I want it to be done. But it also shows the importance of when the next iteration is coming, how important it is to contribute, and if there's actions that are important to you, that you should advocate to get those actions into the LECP. Okay. So my last slide there, Alana, is just on me and Kieran's contact details. So I'm PJ Murphy, PJ underscore Murphy at CorkCity.ie, and Kieran is Kieran underscore O'Connell at CorkCity.ie. We do welcome any questions or comments, or if you want to be directed to any support, something like that, please reach out to us. We'd only be delighted to answer any questions. So that's it.